This time.
Okay.
So, welcome to the Ripples of Change, the podcast that explores how our presence and self-awareness shape the way change unfolds. I'm interested in conversations that help us understand what shapes people, what motivates them, and how their lived experience informs how they lead and create change. So, I'm excited to explore this with my guest, Jen Wofford. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Abby. I'm really glad to be here.
Nice. So,
Thank you.
as I understand you work, you help people have different experiences about how they relate to each other, whether it's in couples or for people talking across difference or across divides.
Yeah.
So let's start with couples. When did you first realize that people need a different experience of one another?
Well, a long time ago, I've been a therapist in private practice for 25 years, over 25 years. And I think intuitively, I knew that people didn't need an explanation or a theory, and they didn't need to come in and each talk to me about the other. They needed an experience of each other that was different. So when they're in pain, their experience of each other in the relationship is that it doesn't feel like a source of ease and comfort and closeness. Instead, the relationship starts to feel like a source of tension and fear and stress um, and fighting and bickering and things like that. So they need to experience each other in a way that feels nourishing and comforting and connecting. And they don't know how to get there on their own. So they don't need me to tell them, hey, it's really important that you don't bicker in front of the kids. I don't need that. They need me to teach them how. So when I'm working with couples, I have them facing each other, knee to knee, eye to eye, close enough to hold hands.
Mm.
And if there's a lot of pain or tension or fighting when they walk in, we don't start with holding hands. If I can get them there pretty quickly, I want them to get connected. And then I usually often start, and this comes from my training in Imago relationship therapy, one of the first certifications I got, Imago. And I have them give appreciations first. You know, one thing I really appreciate about you, or a quality about you I really appreciate is. And the other one mirrors it back. Oh, you really appreciate when I do this or that, or, what something you appreciated about me is this. Am I getting it? So I have them start there usually. And then there's a connection. They're already experiencing each other as a source of sweetness and appreciation and closeness and warmth, and that feels good. Then, using that same model, I can help them talk to each other about what's been hard for me, what's been weighing on me in our relationship is, what worries me is, and then we can hear each other. The other thing I use a lot of in all the work I do, consulting and therapy, and training and teaching, is NVC, nonviolent communication method.
Yes, I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Before you go,
go
and
ahead.
so thank you for that lovely,
Yeah.
very rich image of what happens in the room and how you work with them. Um, what's happening in you internally as you're working with this couple who may not be in sync or, you know, having ease between each other?
Yeah, and they usually come in because there isn't ease, because there is pain. So that's a good question. What is happening for me? I am focused on helping them get where they need to go. So I am focused on noticing where they're tripping up, where they're getting into trouble with each other. So human beings want to connect. Human beings want to be close. They marry someone because they want to experience love. They don't marry someone to be in conflict, but they don't know how to get there. So I'm looking at where they're tripping up. Sometimes, for example, it's a lot of meaning making and interpretations. And the human mind does that. The human mind is constantly making meaning and constantly making interpretations, right? Like flower, a rose is a flower, is red. The brain is categorizing and making sense of things. But we do that too much, I think, at times with other human beings, where we take something to mean something, we interpret it, and then we have quite a reaction depending on the interpretation we've just made. And that interpretation often is not accurate. It often comes from, whether it's cognitive distortions or whether it's assumptions, or whether it's just not really asking. We hear you might say something to me and I might interpret it, and I'm often running with that interpretation. I haven't checked it out.
Right.
Did
Yeah.
you mean for me to interpret this? Is that what you're meaning? I really encourage people to check it out. I was working with a young couple where there was a lot of interpretation and meaning making that was just flying left and right. And so I interrupt it. And
Nice.
I right then and there say, I think you're making a meaning out of that. There's an interpretation you're coming to. I'm not sure it's necessarily true. I often
Right.
offer that as a mantra. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily mean that. Can you
Yeah.
check
Good.
it out? Can you check
Right.
it out with your partner? Is that the meaning they want you to take? And that usually starts to clear up some messy thinking.
Yeah. That's great.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. So, what does it require of you to stay present when this is going on?
that's such a good question. It's intuitive, and I've been doing it for a long, long time, a lifetime. So, uh, before I work with people, I do meditation in the morning. I start at 6:30 with meditation with my DC meditation crew. And I am making sure I'm centered and grounded, and my heart is open and my ears are open so that I am noticing what's needed, and then I'm helping shift and redirect it. Think of it as, I haven't used this metaphor before, but think of it as a train operator. But instead of just going down a single track, I'm navigating and maneuvering down the slaloms of the hill, right? Like that we just saw the Olympics. So I'm trying to say, okay, we need to go this way. Now I see that barrier. Let me help them shift this way. So I'm just sort of in that zone of being very attuned and attentive to them as people and to the dynamic they're creating between each other. There's another method I use a lot of. There's many ways of describing it, but simply let me say this. With couples, I often see what I call the more, the more. So the more one person is frustrated and expresses complaint, the more the other person withdraws and kind of avoids. The more they avoid and withdraw, the more they
Hmm.
complain and get frustrated. The more they complain and get frustrated, the more they avoid and withdraw, right? So that's a more and more pattern that starts to happen. There's another layer of exploring that, which is helping them understand when, just before the impulse to do that thing, right? What's the feeling inside? What's the longing? What's the fear? What's the behavior you actually do or say to your partner in those moments, right? And then helping the other one unpack it. Okay, so I had the impulse
Nice.
to do
Yeah.
this. What was actually happening inside me, in my body, in my head, in my heart? What was I longing for? What was I afraid of in that moment? And then what was the action I took? Because
Yeah.
we are often not acting or
I-
speaking from our
Yeah.
best selves. We
Yeah.
often are acting or speaking out of defensiveness or reactivity. And that's something I do. I talk a lot about both with couples, but also when I'm teaching. I teach therapists, I teach people
Uh-huh.
leading
So,
trainings. It's
yeah.
the reactivity and the defensiveness that
Yeah.
is natural in all of us.
Yeah.
There's
So,
nothing wrong with us for having that.
can I pause you there just
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
just to unpack this? So, there was some tenderness in this about identifying the feeling inside, the longing and the fear. And I noticed it's interesting that you said reactivity, and I'm just wondering if you ever catch yourself being reactive in the moment for whatever that something triggers in you, and then how do you recenter yourself?
I mean, luckily not, because I've been doing it so long, and I have, you know, rather, whatever you want to call it, a profoundly big heart, a profoundly wise lens. And so I generally am not feeling reactive or triggered. Pretty much never. I did have a couple the other day, a young couple, and they brought in their baby because of, childcare issues, and the baby was asleep when they started. And when the baby woke up, um, and I'm going to talk to them about it when I see them, I would have thought that they would have stopped the regular dialogue, and one of them would have picked up the baby out of the chair, the cart seat. And I even asked, would you, do you want to pause? And they're like, no, no, she's fine. But then they continued to have a tone with each other that I thought was not really okay in front of the baby. And they had some long-standing old fights that have been going on a long, long time. And so I actually did sort of say, we're just going to put this one on pause. We're not going to resolve this right now. And but when they come in, I'm going to talk to them about that because that makes me worried about what's happening at home. If they don't recognize that adult tension around something needs to completely cease, we need to put it aside. We need to turn to the baby and say, "Sweetie, you woke up and hi, and you want a hug, and here's that worried me. So I had that reaction inside of some um, I don't know what the word is later, a little worry. I had a little worry, a little stress and worry, like that was not so great that they didn't seem to and
Right.
they're young and
And you worried on their behalf. It wasn't really your reactivity for yourself. It was you worried for them.
yeah, what was yeah, 'cause I was worried, okay, if this is happening here, what happens
Right.
at home?
Right.
And what is this baby witnessing?
Yeah.
So
So,
and yeah.
well,
So
I'm
I
going to
yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want to be sure that we capture
Yeah.
something rich that you said earlier, which
Yeah.
is um, you mentioned, their connection to longing, to identifying their own longing. What do you notice in the room when people connect to their longing?
Oh, well, the other person um their defenses and their anger and their frustrations melt when we hear someone else's longing and fear as opposed. So this goes back to the NVC, nonviolent communication method, developed by Marshall Rosenberg decades ago. I never
Yes.
had the honor of training with him. I've had the honor of training in person with everyone else with whom I hold advanced training in. Amazing. I'm very blessed. I trained with Dick Schwartz before he was famous. I trained with Sue Johnson
Yeah.
in person before she passed away. Very lucky. Um, with the Gottmans, etc. So I did not get to train with Marshall Rosenberg, but essentially, if you can get, so most therapy talks about behavior and feelings, and it stays there. The work I do, I'm going deeper always, whether it's spiritually deeper at a soul level, I'm trying to help people, or with NVC, the underlying need. So if I speak to you about behavior, if we're married, and I'm like, Abby, I'm really mad at you because you did blah, 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 blah. If I'm expressing a frustration towards you, your likelihood of response is either to defend or withdraw. Like, well, I didn't, or well, like, you moved it, or I didn't know, or you didn't tell me, or I'm not talking about this right now. But if instead I speak to you of my feeling and my need, so Abby, I've been feeling sad or angry because my need for communication isn't feeling met with us these days. And, like around the trash can not going out or whatever I'm going to say, you're much more open. Your heart is
Right.
open to hearing me talk about this need for connection and this sadness about having that not met, your heart will open to me. So if I can get couples out of you did, you didn't do, you said, you didn't say, no, you
Right.
said, no, you did, out into I feel because I need. I'm
Right.
feeling because I'm needing. And I want to also clarify this. It isn't that every single need has a feeling. So I could say, Abby, I'm feeling sad because my need for closeness and connection with you isn't being met right now. Or Abby, I'm feeling angry and frustrated because my need for closeness and connection isn't feeling met right now. Or Abby, I'm feeling
Right.
withdrawn or isolated. So
Yeah.
yeah, so a need doesn't have one feeling. It could be different
Yeah.
feelings
Yeah.
depending on the moment.
So I thank you for describing that. I'm very familiar with MVC, and I think it will be very useful for our listeners to hear that excellent description. I'm just wondering, what do you see? I think you said something, but what do you see when people connect with their longing? What do you observe in them in the room?
Softening, opening, tenderness, and then they suddenly are remembering, oh, this is a person I love, not this is the source of irritation towards me. This is the source of aggravation. This is the source of not getting what I want. Oh, this is a person who I love who has pain.
Uh-huh.
Um, and you can, anyway, yeah. That's
Yeah,
what I would say. But it really matters. Often people don't know what their needs are. They
right,
don't know. So I have to take time with them. I have to help them by asking the right questions to get them to identify what is that need? What is that longing?
right,
They know how to articulate, you piss me off or you frustrate me. They have less skill at articulating, I feel, although the most therapy does that, even less at what I'm needing, what I'm longing, what I'm really scared of.
right.
The reason I think I
Most,
react that
yes,
way is because I'm afraid of,
many of us needed to learn how to identify and express our needs, right?
yeah, especially
Um,
women.
yeah, very much so. So this sounds like a very refined practice. What drew you to this work in the first place?
Well, that's a really good question. I, decades and decades ago, I'm 58. Decades and decades ago, I actually, even in high school, thought about being a guidance counselor with the middle school, junior high school age, where I had a very hard time. Uh, or I thought about, I didn't quite know couples counselor, but I was sort of thinking about that. And then I got really passionate about organizing and social justice and politics, and I went into that for 20 years. And then during that period, at one point, I was in Washington working with a national organization, national organizing, and really felt more disconnected than when I was in Massachusetts running organizations and much more connected to people. I started to feel more disconnected. And so I really missed that. So I went and got a social work degree, working full time, going part time for a bunch of years. Took me a while. And then when I graduated, I really wanted to go into being a therapist, but the pay was terrible. And the national organizations, a different one, were recruiting me. And I ended up going back into organizing with a deal that I was supposed to have Fridays off to do a therapy practice, which really didn't work when you're running national campaigns. But I always wanted to do it. I think personally, the reason I was able to do it is I was helped enormously as a human being by therapy. And I had terrible trauma in childhood. And, in my 20s, I'm open about this part. In my 20s, I dragged myself into therapy. The last thing I wanted to do was talk about it. I knew I had to. I didn't want to. I showed up 30 minutes late for a 45-minute session all the time. Like I was really, but I pushed myself to do it. And I also didn't want to do it. But anyway, that's where I started. So I do understand that the idea of therapy can be intimidating to people and can be scary. But I think I know I benefited enormously from decades of phenomenal, some mediocre. I had some really mediocre therapists, and that teaches me what I don't want to do. One thing that's important to me that it's an energy that I encourage and promote with couples, with clients, with myself, and how I talk to them. Freedom and independence to choose no obligation. So I had a therapist who really made me feel obligated to show up and work with her. And when I tried to end it several times, she guilted me into keep going. That was not cool. So I say to people, even if I've been seeing them for a year, would you like to make an appointment next week or not? Because either is okay. They are not obligated to see me. I have a
Mhm.
client that needed a lot of support going through a difficult relationship into a breakup and reached out a lot. And I was right there with her a lot. And then she sent me a lovely note this morning. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. Da 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 da. I like your amazing support, all the help. I'm so grateful. I'm heading off to this trip and I'll be in touch when I'm back. And I'm not going to write, well, you really need to make an appointment with me. I'll be like, whatever you want. I have some clients who come in or out I don't hear from them for a year and then they come back up. I have clients who reach out and say, I don't know if you remember me. Like you worked with me 10 years ago. I'm like, of course I remember you. Can I see you? I'm like, of course. And when they end, I say the door is always open. You are
Yeah.
welcome to
So
reach
tell me
out.
something. Yeah.
I was going to finish the sentence. You're welcome to reach out as soon as next week or never. Because
Yeah.
there's freedom, there's no obligation. And with couples, I really emphasize that importance that love when it's based on obligation sours. If a dynamic within a couple, sex has become an obligation,
Right.
it loses passion.
Yeah. How did you come by the self-awareness to know that when that woman guilted you, um, because some people don't have the awareness to do that. How did you come to that?
It took me a while to officially break up with that therapist. There were many things she did that were good, but she pushed me in certain directions that were actually not wise advice. And then again, when I was trying to end it, saying, I think this is, I appreciated everything, but I'm ready to move on, she kept pressuring me to see her. Not cool. So I was like, I will never do that to someone. And by then, I was still in organizing, not yet a therapist myself. Um, so I hadn't even started social work school yet. So, but I took that experience with me. Like, don't ever make someone feel obligated. We are here to help. And it's stressful because, I had a couple of clients have babies this fall, and then a couple of couples take breaks for different reasons or travel. And one person had major knee surgery. So all of a sudden, I didn't have a lot of clients by December, and financially stressful. But that doesn't mean they owe me a session. That's my responsibility to, balance my books and also do marketing and, everything I have to do. But that's so important that we are there for them without obligation, is how I think. And that's the healthiest, right? So if I can go psychologically theory for a moment, all human beings around age 2, can be as young as 1.5 to 3, go through this experience of trying to wander out into the world and check back to make sure mom or dad is there.
Right,
Is it safe to go out? And we either end up giving, as a parent, we either can sometimes give children one of two messages. Either it's not safe, stay close to mommy or daddy, or you wander off, and when you turn, I'm unavailable because I'm on my phone or I've walked into the other room, and that stirs in the child insecurity, attachment. So people end up growing up, not always. Sometimes there's wonderful parenting, and that is a blessing. Many people have either a parent who was not attuned, was not responsive, was not there when they turned around to
right.
make sure is mommy there. Or they had an experience of someone who was engulfing and smothering. Come be
Right.
with me. The world's not safe. So anyway,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. So I'm mindful of the time, and I
Yeah.
really so thank you for that.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you.
and I want to be sure to have time to talk about groups because you do group work. So
Yeah.
how do these tensions that you're talking about play out in the groups that you work with?
Sure. So, one big topic that I've been doing a lot of work on for a while is Israel, Palestine, and Gaza. There's a lot of pain. So, simplistically, this is a simple way of phrasing it, if you take two deeply traumatized peoples and give them weapons and guns, it's going to blow up. It's bad. It's very painful. And most Americans feel this war painfully, either because they may be Jewish and they may have family history or even actual connection these days to Israel, or they're really in a lot of pain at seeing the destruction of Gaza and children uh, being killed and humans' lives obliterated. It's impossible to describe the magnitude of the suffering. So one thing I did is I saw people going into reactivity here in the States. I can't fix what's happening in Gaza. I know that. But I can try here where I live to give people a way to come together. And so I created events immediately after October 7th. I saw people polarizing. You're either with me or you're against me. Stand with Israel or stand for Palestinians. And people were literally breaking out in physical fights in towns like Newton. We don't need to be doing that. I mean, so I thought, oh, no, no, no. We need to come together and value all human life as sacred. And I told people explicitly on the flyers, we don't need to agree to value all human life as sacred. If you are only here to support Palestinians, you are welcome. If you are only here to support Israelis, you are welcome. If you're here to support both, you're welcome. But people don't walk into a room like that, kumbaya, I accept everyone. They may not be there. So I make a space there, a big tent. And then I created an activity, no speakers, because words were so fraught and people's interpretations were wild, right? I could have said one sentence and the interpretations of what it meant would have raised tension in the room. So no speakers, activities. People could come in and make cards of support that could go to Palestinians or to Israelis or to both if they were willing to do both, but they're not required. Again, there's freedom, right? You hear the freedom? You don't have to come to an event I organize ready to support all humanity if that's not where you're at. So you have a choice. I give people choice. And then a table, you could go and do prayers. We had all the world's religions with tea light candles, and there were ministers and priests who came in and dropped to their knees praying, rabbis who came in, beautiful Muslim community partners came in, and then a station for donations and activities and ways to help. And again, you could do what you wanted. You are not obligated to go to all three. You're not obligated to pray. You're not obligated to write a card. I try to create freedom and space within a place that gives people safety and connection. And when we give them a way to express their pain, because under the arguing is pain. The therapist in me knows that. Under the arguing is pain. When we give them a way to express their care and love and do something, like I can write a card to people in Israel. I can write a card to people mostly in the West Bank. We couldn't get cards into Gaza because nothing could get in, but I
Right.
can write cards to people who are in pain and I can tell them how sad I am, how much love I send, how much care I want them to know we are holding for them. They are held in care. Those
Right.
cards were like prayers.
So it's very beautiful. That's very, very moving, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it all just came to me. I didn't read a model for it. Nobody taught me a model. I didn't read it in a book. It came to me and I just felt what was needed, which is what I do with couples. Like, what's needed here? How do I help these people get out of fighting each other right here in our towns and come together in a way where we can respect differences and start to do something positive that feels meaningful. It touches the heart. And let me say one other thing, if I could. I recently did, as I think you may remember, I recently did a public reading of the names of all children killed in the war, which is overwhelmingly Palestinian and some Israeli. And we had them organized by age. And it was a horrible, stormy, rainy night, but we did it anyway. And I held it in a public library again as neutral turf. And people enter public libraries as neutral turf.
Right.
It's offered synagogues and mosques, but no, neutral turf. And then they could read a whole page of names by age. It's extremely
Oh,
painful to read a page of Palestinian children. And we struggled with their names, age 5 or age 7, read the names. And some people came and read one page and left. They were busy, right? They came in
yeah,
between work.
lovely.
Some people came and read for an hour and just stood to give vigil because what I was creating, which I found out later, is public grief rituals. Humans need a way to come together and have a ritual for processing extraordinary grief and pain over the destruction of children, and to come together honoring all human life. And there were some people who were Israeli who came in just to read Israeli names. That's welcome because we're all human life matters. So anyway, that's some of what I do. That's part. The other part I do is dialogues.
Yeah. So before you go there, this piece is very, very rich, very moving. And having the public grief rituals, um, because we don't really have that as a society.
Yeah,
And the brilliance of what you created, which was the activities, before talking about dialogues, that you got the activities. And you said, I'm giving them a space to express their pain and to express their care and love.
exactly. And
Can
prayers. Yes.
you talk about the sort of, I'm noticing a paradox between the pain on the one hand and the care and love on the other. Can you talk about that?
Oh, I think it's essential that when there's pain, we will get relief by doing something that shows care and something that gives care, concern and love to another human being. And I do believe it matters. So does an event in a Brookline library really matter to people who are dying? I think it does because like the effects of the wings of a butterfly, that can affect the weather patterns the other side of the globe, people gathering and pouring their hearts into these cards. And then I carefully sorted them. And I want to say this, I invited an Israeli friend to my apartment, and this was very painful for her. She gathered the addresses of where people who had been displaced, their kibbutz had been destroyed. Where were they? They were at one particular hotel on the Dead Sea or a different hotel. And we sorted the cards for the Israelis and into packets that we sent to where survivors were based. In some cases, individual mothers. She had their addresses. She did that. So I give her first, I'll just say the first initial of her first name is Y, and I give her my heart for doing that hard, painful work. Then I sorted the cards for Palestinians, and it took effort because I shipped them out first to UNRWA, United Nations Refugee
Yep.
Agency in Jordan for
Mm-hmm.
Gaza and West Bank, and it came back months later, unexplained, returned.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went through the organizations that I know of in the West Bank and Israel saying, how can we help? How can we help? And I connected with them again. And what I connected with is the Parents Circle, which is a beautiful
Yes, I'm
organization.
familiar with it. With
Yeah, people who have
yeah.
lost children on both sides and
Yeah.
got an address from them to the West Bank. And then I was getting all these messages because it had to go through DHL only to the West Bank. And then DHL, I got in touch with a WhatsApp message by someone I didn't know. They wanted to know, okay, what's the contents? What is it? And I had to answer. And they said, oh, this is beautiful. I'm going to tell the driver. It's going to be so meaningful to him. He's my father. And I wrote back, please give him, our deepest prayers and such gratitude for his delivering these messages. And he said,
Mm.
oh, he's going to love this. So it was like extremely personal. Like I'm getting
Oh,
messages
good.
from Palestine, from a woman, I think it was in Bethlehem. It was really rather remarkable.
Yep.
Anyway,
I'm
it
feeling
helps
the
human beings. And that father and she, the DHL courier, had the experience of knowing we're delivering prayers and love
mm.
in a time of crisis. That touches their hearts.
Yeah, I just want to sit with that for a minute because, right?
Yeah. And I think this is what human beings need. I believe this is what human beings are lacking in our very busy, remote,
Yeah.
AI, computer-based work.
Yeah.
That's why I work in person. When I work with organizations, I insist on in person. I had to do
Yeah.
one remote, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I
we
don't want to
need
stray too
connection.
far
Yeah,
from this experience, which was
yeah.
very heartfelt. And I noticed you put your hand on your heart. And I'm just wondering what was happening inside you as you were telling me that story.
I think that the heavier experience in my heart was sorting the cards and knowing that each card was truly the heart and prayers of a person. And there were children we invited to the event, so there were, no violent images, no violent speakers, just
Oh,
children made with glitter and little hearts and lots of stickers, and so these were gifts. So as I sorted them, I held that weightiness in my heart and in my hands, and trying to get them where they were. And I had several hospitals in Gaza that we shipped to that we never heard back. Hopefully they made it. Hospitals in throughout Israel, Shamir and a couple others. And we sorted ones that seemed like they may be better for a hospital to there. And so that was the real deep honor to sort. It's sort of like I'm not Catholic, but I think it would be like a priest receiving confession. Like you're taking the depths of people's pain and you are honoring it. Like um, that was the real intense work.
hmm.
And then I did feel quite a lot of shock and pain when the package came back, and I kept trying to reach out to UNRWA and reach out through New York and figure out why it wasn't going through, and then just gave up and move on. Move on. They have other priorities, so move on and find a way to get the messages delivered where people wanted them to go. That was my job, get them where they wanted them to go.
Yeah. So I'm noticing a parallel here that
Yeah,
the package came back, which means
yeah,
that the communication didn't get through.
right.
And that seems a parallel to what you were seeing with the couples in the room, that the communication didn't get across.
Yeah, yeah. You're
So,
right. And that's my job is to help the communication because people don't know how. So let me say, I do not think most people are hateful. I don't think most people, I'll give you this example. I was talking with someone this summer who does, I am Jewish. He doesn't know I'm Jewish. I don't lead with that. And he said, I can't believe what the Jews are doing to Palestinians. I said, well, all the Jews? He said, no, the Israelis. I said, all the Israelis? He said, no. And I said, I forgot how the rest of it went, but basically we landed at the Israeli government. And I said, everyone will agree with you on that. The Israeli government, you can have an opinion about the Israeli government. But we make these big generalizations, right? Or all Palestinians are dangerous, right? I mean, obviously that's ridiculous. Let me go to interpretation. One of the core hot button phrases that causes reactivity in that topic within the United States, I don't think it's as hot button in Israel and in Gaza, but from the river to the sea. So, from the river to the sea, what someone who's Israeli or Jewish might hear is, the only thing between uh, the Red Sea and from the river to the sea, the only thing between it is Israel. So if they're talking about from the river to the sea, they're talking about destroying Israel. If you talk to, especially I've had these conversations, um, a social justice progressive American who wants Palestinian liberation, from the river to the sea means to them support all Palestinians, liberation for all Palestinians. They don't have the same interpretation.
Right,
So you get
right.
a group of people chanting it, and boy, oh boy, is it incendiary to someone else. And
Yes,
then their
yes.
reaction makes no sense to the other people. We have different interpretations of the same words and what it means.
Right. So tell me something in a group that may be that polarized, even with that one very triggering phrase, how do you set up the conditions in a group for the vulnerability to emerge and the feelings?
Thank you, Abby. So the reason I'm able to do it and the reason it works is that I create a very tight structure before they're allowed to even speak. And I designed this again all on my own. It came to me and I designed it. And then I was talking with a wonderful Muslim collaborative therapist colleague who I did some of these workshops with for institutions that were in conflict on this topic. Um, a big teaching hospital in the Boston area, their staff, students, and physicians were in conflict, not patients. I mean, we don't go that level, but they were in conflict on the topic. So I walked her through the agenda. I was talking with my colleague about it, and she said, well, you don't have them talking for 20 minutes. And I think that's a mistake. And I said, I usually agree with you, but what would you do? And she said, well, have them at least say, let's go around and have them at least say their name and why they're there. And I said, normally, yes, but let me play it out loud for you. So I can hear at different perspectives because I can put myself in other people's shoes instantaneously without struggle. That's not hard for me. I can put myself in a dozen different people's shoes and get what it might feel like for them. So I said, fine, let me play it out for you. I'm Jen, and I'm here because I'm the only one who cares about Palestinian lives. We have lost the room. I'm Jen. I'm here because I'm the only one who cares about Israel's right to exist and defend itself. We have lost the room. So no, they don't get to speak until I've given them 20 minutes of structure, training, container, and specific guidelines. Then they speak. And then the language is the first round. After a bunch of training, I teach NVC, I teach a little imago mirroring, I teach some somatic
Good.
experiencing.
What's your
How do
first
we,
question?
let me finish that. And I teach somatic experiencing. How do you regulate yourself when you get reactive? And I teach them a little IFS. How do you talk inside to your parts? And I tell them someone may likely say something that offends, upsets, or hurts you. That may likely happen. When that happens, here's how we will deal with it. That all takes place before anyone opens their mouths. So that now I've warned them. Someone may likely say something. Here's how you will deal with it. I'll teach them skills and I will support them and help them. So then the first question is your name. What are your hopes for today? I'm Jen, and my hopes are for some understanding. I'm Jen, and my
Hmm.
hopes are for some discussion or respect. My hopes are for some connection. My hopes are for more peace than we're seeing in the world, or my hopes are to get my point across so people understand it, whatever it is. Then we go into rounds, and often the first round that I start with is I give them a choice. Again, very important to me. I give people freedom and a choice. So I give them tight structure and freedom within it. Tight container, freedom within it. So um, the freedom to choose, what's been weighing on my heart about this war is what's been hard for me about this war is Where I think we as a community are getting stuck is, and I
Oh,
also did
nice.
this recently for a big therapy training institution based in New York, an institute, national, international. And so that had to be on Zoom. And we did two big sessions for them. And that was lovely. And I brought in four colleagues. Two were Muslim, and one was Jewish, and one was, I think, Quaker or Christian. And so we had extra colleagues to run the breakout rooms because you need to have one skilled person per small group to really
Yeah,
make it work. I can
yeah.
handle a big room. I could do it. I did this with like 180 people at a big school system where there had been a blow up around this topic, but I was in person, and on Zoom it can go haywire. So um, I forgot what I was just going to say with that, but anyway, so then within that, they're talking about what's weighing on them, what's been hard, or where we as a community got stuck. And I'm about to do this with a big statewide organization in Massachusetts, a huge statewide organization. And I'm going to talk to the president and reassure him. Most of the work leading up to these dialogues is reassurance. When I did it with the school system, I had to spend 2 hours on the phone with one dean, reassuring her, no, you're not going to get yelled at. That's not what's going to happen. I promise. Let me tell you again what's going to happen. No, you're not going to get yelled at. Like, I
Yeah.
really reassuring. And now the president of this big institution um, needs to talk again. We have, we've started a plan to move forward, but I need to just reassure him because people are worried. Because usually you let people talk and things don't go well and they have tension. And when there's tension and fighting, people's feelings get hurt. And then there's tension on the board or tension in the organization.
Yeah.
So they're afraid. How can this really work? So anyway, that's what
Nice.
I'll do this week.
Well, thank you for that description. You absolutely light up when you're talking about that.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yes,
Abby.
I can see the excitement and your deep empathy for people who are experiencing pain. And so in this conversation, I heard how you bring your extraordinary gift for empathy and compassion to people. I just
Thank
want
you.
to appreciate, thank you for bringing your presence into this conversation. And I really appreciate how we made meaning here together.
Oh, thank you, Abby. It's such an honor and a delight. And I really appreciate your time and your wisdom. And I appreciate your questions and I appreciate your pulling things together and making meaning and sense of parallels that you heard. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.